twisted through seven.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to this very special episode of the Soberful podcast. I'm Veronica.
And I'm Chip.
And this podcast is a celebration of our 6-year anniversary of podcasting. Chip,
Which I find... No, I can't, actually. I find it really... I'm not quite sure whether I find it... Well, first of all, it's a great achievement. I didn't think we would make 6 years. I didn't think we would do 1 year. But it also kind of slightly perturbs me that 6 years has gone by and it feels like about 3 and...
Not even, yeah. Over half a decade.
Yes, and that bothers me, my sort of lack of grasp of time and I mean, it's great, of course, but I just really... I hear things like that. It's like we've been in this house 10 years. I think we've been here about 5, you know.
I know. It's like, where does the time go?
Yeah.
Everything's speeding up as well.
Yeah. So it's great. I mean, it's great. And I think it's, we've done it without advertising and it's hopefully a good listen. But I'm really pleased that we've done that. But it does slightly freak me out that it is 6 years, yeah.
So because it's our anniversary, we always do an Ask Us Anything episode. So we have some really great and completely random questions. But so we've had all-time 1.6 million 200, I can't even say it, 1621078. 1,600,000. 621,000, yes, podcast downloads. And then this is the bit that I just find crazy. It's all over the world. So we have, let's have a look. Downloads per country. So the USA is our biggest, which is kind of to be expected. Then the UK, Canada, Australia, Ireland, South Africa, Germany, New Zealand, Italy, Taiwan. And then it just goes crazy. I mean, then you have like different countries in Europe, Hong Kong, Ukraine. Gosh, can't imagine they've got much time to listen to podcasts, poor people. Croatia, Singapore, Brazil, Kenya, Poland, Virgin Islands, US, Iceland, Czech Republic, Jersey, Channel Islands, Russian Federation, Côte d'Ivoire.
I know the. Yeah, well, that's Michelle. That's Michelle.
Zimbabwe, Greece, Serbia, Slovakia, Tonga, Vietnam, Zambia, Belize, Korea. I mean, it's kind of Indonesia, Kuwait, Tanzania, Cyprus, Mozambique. I mean, it's crazy. All over the world. Nepal, Nicaragua, Senegal. Yeah, it's crazy. So, we're thank you so much for everyone's support and, feedback. Some lovely comments. Somebody left this rating. This is an excellent podcast for anyone trying to stop their addiction to alcohol. It works for any addiction, really. Veronica and Chip are fantastic together. This podcast has helped me immeasurably. I'm just glad they mentioned me because most of it is like, oh, and we love Chip.
Well, there is a certain logic to listening to the feedback from the audiences. I think there's something to be said for that. Yeah, no.
This podcast is the real deal. It's been my North Star over the last few years as I move towards sobriety. Thank you for this thoughtful and insightful podcast, Chip.
Great.
Yeah. Wow, you guys are amazing. I'm a recovery coach and have shared your podcast with so many of my clients. Thank you. Oh, that's really nice. Okay. Yeah. So there's lots of really nice comments.
Stuff.
So we asked you guys for some questions. So let's start with this one because it's kind of okay. So Chip and Veronica, what was your first impression of Veronica? Veronica, what was your first impression of Chip? How would you describe each other now after knowing each other for 20 years? Interesting. Oh. Okay, go on. I'm like kind of going.
Okay, well, I remember exactly our first meeting. Focus was in its original building, the first building it ever started in. And I know that I was desperately looking for, because I was in this remote market town. It was really difficult to get people to come up from London to work, difficult to find local people who were clean. And, it was just difficult to find people to work. And you rang me and said, "Oh, I need a placement." And I thought, that's normally a placement is a pain in the arse because you get people that are inexperienced, they need lots and lots of time and attention. They're quite good for kind of doing little bits and pieces, but they're very rarely useful. But anyway, so I went into the meeting with you. I remember we went to lunch down at that nice fish restaurant just down the road. And I thought, here's somebody who's talking sense, somebody who's, because normally people who are doing placements, they're a bit kind of haven't really got their head screwed on right. And I thought, oh no, this woman's got her head screwed on right. And I felt I could definitely make it work. And I felt that right from the get-go, you were going to be somebody who would be useful rather than a drain on our resources. And that's what it proved to be as well. You proved to be very useful right from the get-go. And very quickly you were competent enough, if that's the right word, to be doing individual work, group work, lectures and things. And you very quickly proved your worth and were incredibly useful and helpful in developing Focus 12 in the way we were able to. No, it was a you just also, I think there's definitely something I've always admired about American work ethic, which is completely different to English work ethic.
I do have an American work ethic.
Yeah, you do. Yeah, and that's something that I've always. You remember Nancy had it. She worked with us as well.
Yeah,
there was no question. The difference sometimes was quite stark, but so you had that. You had a kind of, I really want to do this. I'm going to work hard. I want to get on with it. And I thought, well, this is a no-brainer. So, yeah.
So my first impressions were, I remember I was in an AA meeting and I just got back from America a few weeks and I had the qualification but no experience. And I was chatting to someone who said, there's a treatment center in town called Focus. You need to speak to Chip. He runs it. And I remember thinking, Chip is a really not a British name. Like no. It's not a Chip. You would you'd meet a Chip in America, but you wouldn't meet a Chip. And it's quite an unusual name in the UK.
Very.
And so I think I did call you and you said, come in. And I was really nervous. And I just kept remembering, Chip, it's a really American name. Chip, it's a really, do you remember this bit? I walked in and I went, is Chuck there? Come here to see Chuck. And he went, it's Chip. And I was like, oh God, I remember that so clearly. Because I was so obsessed with it. It's an American name. It came out as Chuck, which is again another American name.
It is.
And then,
and one people often have called me Chuck. Actually,
it's because of that, Chuck and Chip. It's like me. I get Valerie all the time.
Yeah, it's annoying. It's annoying, but it was. I let it go. I let it pass.
Then basically, I just found you incredibly scary. Like
really,
yeah, because you're an authority figure and you just seemed to know what you were doing, and I didn't know anything. Yeah, I was really scared of you, really, for a long time. When people get to know you now, and then they later hear your story, there's a kind of reconfiguration that goes on in your brain of like the person who's presenting, and then the person who did all of these things. It's very hard to mesh those things, to be honest, when people meet you now. And I know you kind of know that and have had that reaction. Yeah. So that my first impression, basically I was terrified for a long time, really a long time, until, I don't know, I guess I eventually just matured into sobriety in my role and stuff like that. But I really loved working at Focus. I enjoyed all of it. And I just think I got the best training. You were also, I want to say, you were really good at being supportive and good at giving good feedback. Like when, I messed up or should have done something differently, you were really good at putting that in a way that you didn't feel shamed, that you were like, okay, right, I can see that. I want to learn from that. I always felt like that. I didn't ever felt terrified of fucking up, because that always felt really good. So,
great, good. That's good. That's good to hear. Yeah.
Yeah. So the last part is, how would you describe each other now after knowing each other for over 20 years? I want to say I was thinking about this. I was actually thinking about this last night, and I was thinking about the people I know who have got sober long term and have stayed sober, but have become quite unwell mentally and emotionally.
Yeah.
They're not picking up substances, to the best of my knowledge, but there's been a real deterioration in their mental and emotional health.
Mm-hmm.
And I was sort of, because I was thinking about someone I know, and I was thinking about that. And then I thought about you, and I thought, and then there's people like Chip who've just been, I know you've been through shit in your life, but have just had this steady, like, how long have you been? Is it 38 years?
39.
Now? 39.
Yeah.
39. Yeah. So, and I was thinking about that last night and thinking like there is a group, do you know what I mean? There is a group of people who don't go back to drinking and using, but their mental and emotional health and their behavior really goes off.
Yeah.
And then there's other people, long-term sobriety, who are still working a program and are steady. Stuff happens, but there's still they're anchored. That's the word I want to use. That's how I would describe you. I would describe you as anchored.
Great. That's good to hear. I was at a meeting in Greece, online meeting in Greece yesterday, and there were about 8 of us who had all got clean in the same 4-month period in London, and one of them was celebrating 40 years, and there was something still that remained about those people that were there, that there was that kind of camaraderie and support for each other that was still there, as strong as it ever had been 40 years later. It was really lovely to see. Yeah, it was great to see.
Best club in the world.
Best club in the world, yeah. So I think you've done really well for yourself. I think you've probably excelled what I thought you were going to do. You're very ambitious, and that's nothing wrong in that at all. It's good to be ambitious. I mean, you've done things that I find, like you've written Soberful. I find just that's a textbook that I give to people and that people use. And I hope you're very proud of it, because and it's great to see you because you definitely weren't with anybody when I first met you, and to be now seeing you as a mum and as a entrepreneur and as a person that you are. And this wouldn't be happening if it wasn't for you and your drive. I wouldn't have got this shit together. It's I really admire that, because I have the idea, but then I don't know what to do with it. Whereas you find out what to do with it and do it. I admire that. Yeah.
Thank you. That's really nice. So I wanted to do a podcast for years, and I'd done some radio in the UK, and I was on BBC something or other, and the guy was like, "Have you ever done this before? You're really good. You should have your own show." And I was like, "I absolutely want to have my own show." and I tried to do it on my own, and I thought, I need someone to banter with. Like, I need some back and forth.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, I just thought, I just need someone who's really got it, like who just knows their shit and is okay mentally and emotionally. Who is that person? And the only person I could really think of was you. So yeah, it's amazing.
You considered others?
I don't think I really did, no.
Oh, okay, good.
I really didn't. I couldn't think of anyone who checked the boxes. And, it was someone who had like experience, knowledge, but also was okay themselves. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
Who was, living a life that was, a good example of sobriety, I guess, and we both had our ups and downs, but I think we're both quite anchored and quite solid. And that's what long-term sobriety needs to be. You need to be anchored.
I would hope so. Yeah.
Okay,
great.
So
good.
That's a good question. So let's go to another question. I think this is a good one for you, Chips. This is from Dave.
Okay.
I would very much appreciate hearing more about navigating 12 steps without a belief or desire to believe in God with a capital G. Thanks for all you do. I just want to say before you answer that, the very first episode we did, like episode 1, is on spirituality for atheists. So you might also want to listen to that one. But
there's also an episode I didn't call The Simple Steps, which is. But in answer, Dave hasn't got access to that right now. But in answer to your question, I am an absolutely rabid atheist. I abhor the term agnostic because it implies that, well, you probably might. I don't have any doubt at all in my mind that there is no God or any kind of higher extraterrestrial whatever phenomenon at all. However, I am aware that if you go to AA and NA, you have to see the word God written large on the walls and in the literature, and it's unavoidable. And despite my protestations over the years, they're not going to change it. So I have to work out what do they really mean there. And if you actually do read all the text, there is plenty of room for maneuver. My understanding of I don't have to, I can navigate the steps as an atheist, because what it requires me to do is not do it on my own. I have to be able to accept, you can call it a higher power, you can call it something else if you want to. I don't even like the word higher power. I would prefer support system. I have to rely on, if I think I can do this on my own, I am doomed. I'm absolutely doomed. I have benefited hugely from taking help from people, having people around who can help me in difficult times, being able to ask people for help. So my support system are real people who can give me real answers in real time, and that's how I work the steps. And I can apply that principle through all the steps. And as I said, if you listen to the podcast on Spirituality for Atheists or the Simple Steps, I go into it in much more length. But I don't think there's anything that stops me from working any of the steps as an atheist and as somebody who doesn't have any belief in any kind of abstract force.
So just to contextualize this, I guess this person is asking this question because it's the 12-step programs are the programs that mention God. Now, there are lots of avenues to get sober. There's lots of programs and peer-led programs that don't mention God. But I mean, back when we first stopped, there wasn't. There was just no other option, and the internet wasn't a thing. We had to make it work. But there are other options, and I always use you as an example. I mean, just what you were saying about being in a meeting and, you know, people who've been together for over 40 years. That's a spiritual experience, right?
Exactly. No,
how else do you
absolutely
describe that?
No, I would describe that as a spiritual experience, but spiritual experiences don't have to be religious. They're just they're just spiritual. I mean, it's not, if I make a decision, as I did earlier on, not to steal anymore, that's a behavioral change, but it's also a kind of spiritual change. It's I don't want to be that type of person any longer. So yes, it's a behavioral thing. I'm going to stop behaving in that way. But also there's a change of attitude, which, would be called spiritual, that goes along with that decision. I would love the 12 steps to be written without the word God. It would please me no end, but it's not going to happen. So
I wouldn't.
You wouldn't, yeah. Well, yeah.
And that's what's interesting is I always had a belief in God. It was really very vague and not particularly religious, but there was a concept there that made sense to me. Yeah. And that's only deepened and grown. So I do believe in God. I don't, right. How I define that is I'm still understanding how I define that.
Yeah.
But you've got, both the same program worked for both of us.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, as long as I think, as I said, I don't want to be repetitive, but the principle is just acknowledge that you can't do it on your own. And as soon as you've done that, you've opened up yourself to the advice, guidance, and support of other people. If you shut yourself off and say, no, I can do this all on my own. Well, first of all, I think you're bang in trouble, because very few people who have had long histories of drinking or using drugs suddenly have an understanding of how to stay sober. So where are you going to get that? Where are you going to get that information from? You can get it from books, I guess. You can get it from podcasts and things nowadays, but you certainly couldn't in the old days. But I think, to me, the secret is just acknowledging that you can't do it on your own and that you need help. And, some people, even people will find criticism about that. Oh, what, you mean you can't do this on your own? No, actually, I can't. I've tried doing it on my own.
Clearly.
Tried years and years to try doing it on my own. Didn't work. So I think it's probably time I took a bit of help. Yeah.
The other thing is, and I wrote a piece about this, it's on my website called The Misinformation of Alcoholics Anonymous, I think. And I think you can trace the principles of the 12 steps back to the Gnostic religions that predate Christianity in the Mediterranean, which is, again, they're just really, really fabulous tools for living. Self-reflection, clearing up your side of the street, focusing on your internal life, not your external life. Those are really basic, fundamental.
Taking stock of your personality, making amends. Yeah, all those things. They're basic principles and the sort of background to most therapeutic interventions. Acknowledging you got a problem. Well, nobody's going to make any progress with a problem unless they first of all acknowledge that they have a problem. So that's the kind of, I think there's not a single one of the steps that you can't actually sort of actually trace back, or as you said, match perfectly acceptable therapeutic interventions that are used all over the place. Yeah.
So anyway, good answer to that. Hopefully that helped, Dave. It doesn't need to be a obstacle to getting sober. Okay, I want to go down to this one.
Okay.
Yeah. So this lady said, I'm almost 1 year sober and have been finding it hard lately as I feel less outgoing. My partner drinks most weekends, which has caused some differences in our relationship. I do try to be as outgoing as I can be, but it's still very new to me, socializing without alcohol. I regretfully looked through my partner's phone to find messages of him and his friends saying that he thinks I'm boring and that he wishes he was single, all because we went home for a night out earlier than he wanted to. I don't know if I should confront him about this since I'm in the wrong for snooping on his phone, but I'm really hurt over the messages. What should I do? So there's a lot there.
There is a lot there. Well, I mean,
finding sobriety hard. There's looking at the phone.
Well, straight off, I'm very, very, I've got a real problem with privacy. If you're going to snoop or open up mail, diaries, phones, that's somebody else's private information, you're going to have to take whatever you see on the chin, because you've really overstepped a mark. I know where it comes from. It comes from certain things that happened in my childhood, that I get absolutely obsessed about privacy of stuff that's mine. I don't like my letters being read. I don't like my phone being touched. But it's not because I've got anything to hide. It's just that I don't like people. That's my private space. Leave my private space alone. You don't get into bed with me. So leave me alone. Leave my privacy alone. So yes, I think that would probably be a lesson to learn in the future. However, I wouldn't say anything about that. I think the fundamental message that you're saying is that, first of all, it's not just you're struggling with being less outgoing. Well, that's everybody's story. I think when they first get sober, it's very, very difficult to start suddenly finding social confidence. But if your partner is still drinking, he's got social confidence. It comes from a bottle, but he's got social confidence, which is always going to make you feel a little bit less than by comparison every time you go out. Doesn't sound to me as if your partner is supportive of your recovery. It doesn't sound as if he's changing his behavior to try and adapt to your sobriety. It doesn't sound to me as if he is on the same team as you regarding your sobriety. And that feels to me the thing that needs to be addressed, because yes, I don't think it was a good idea to go looking on his phone, but what you did find actually was some quite useful information in a way, which I would keep to yourself. But you found out that he finds you boring because you're doing something really healthy. You're looking after yourself. You're looking after your body. You're looking after you're stopping doing something really dangerous and poisonous, and he isn't in the slightest bit, because he's supportive, because he's got to deal with somebody else. He's got to adapt and change, and he doesn't sound like he wants to. And I think I would be having discussions with him about, how do you feel about me being sober? How big a problem is it for you? Are there ways in which we can compromise? Not about you drinking, but how can we compromise about going out? Do you want to go out on your own more often? But that seems to me the thing that needs to be addressed there, rather than the snooping thing, which I've already made a comment about. First of all, 1 year sober, was I socially confident? Not really. I think I was still struggling with social anxiety and wasn't really feeling as relaxed as I would like to have been. I would probably be a bit more patient with that, but being around a partner who is drinking, it's always going to make it more difficult because he's going to take you to drinking places. And I think it's his lack of support that needs to be addressed. And you can do that, as I said, just by saying, well, how do you feel about me being sober? And if he says, well, why do you ask that? Well, just say, well, because it feels like it's a problem for you. When, I left early the other day and you got really pissed off. So what's going on? That's what I would do.
This is what I want to say is, so first of all, I want to talk about the first year of sobriety being very unique. It's not how it is long term. It can feel hard at times. It can feel boring at times. It's a massive lifestyle change. It's a whole thing. It's just what we were talking about earlier. It's why we need other people. Navigating life without alcohol is almost a new skill that we have to learn. It's weird. It's weird. It's strange. It's all those things. Now, I really want people to understand this. Early sobriety is not how it is long term. No. It doesn't stay that way, but it's such a massive lifestyle change. There's so many things going on. It is going to feel weird and different and all those kind of things. So I'm an extrovert. I by the time I was in my second and third year, I was going out all the time. I was single. I was in my late 20s. I was going to, I lived in Cambridge. We had so many great bands to see, and I would go dancing with my friends at the weekend. I was very, very social, and I did it all sober, and I did it all with some people who were drinking, some people who were not drinking. And I very quickly saw how boring drunk people are, and it's complete reverse. So there's a lot here about perception. So there's a lot that know that it's not going to be like this for always, this kind of first year, all weird, different, staying home sometimes because it's safer. That will go. So you can have a full social life. I'm going to say that what I see here is, I'll just name it. There's a big, when your partner is is very dedicated to drinking and their social life is built around that, and they have zero understanding that that's problematic, it's going to be hard to reconcile that relationship.
Yeah, and he's also talking about you to his friends very negatively, which is not a great, not a loving thing. Do I talk about Heidi to my best friend? Yeah, of course I do, but I don't go, well, I don't want to bloody be with her. I might say, well, I found dealing with that a little bit difficult. But I'm not saying, well, I don't want to be with her. I can't stand being with her. I wish I wasn't with her. That's a very different thing. And I think when he's starting to talk to his friends and acquaintances about you like that, that's a pretty big red flag to me.
I want to say I know that I felt like this at the beginning, and I now look back and feel really lucky that I actually didn't have a relationship in early sobriety. But I've seen this happen with and I want to say women in particular. Is my self-esteem was so low. I operated from a place of don't leave me, don't leave me, don't leave me. And I've seen so many women compromise their health, their wellness, their values, their self-worth to just not be left and stay with some asshole who doesn't deserve them.
God, I wish it was a gender thing. That sounds like me when I got that sounds like me at 5 years when I'd been cheated on by my girlfriend, and I was still pleading with her to take me back, buying her presents, and she'd completely cheated on me. So I don't. Well, certainly with this particular male, I haven't got that one sorted at all.
I think it is across the genders, but I've just seen women throw I'm just going to say, don't settle for crumbs from the table. And I know where I was at that point. I would have been so desperate not to have left. I'd have clung on, and I may quite as well have drunk again, because I always thought the relationship was what was going to save me and was what I wanted more than anything else. So she says at the end, what should I do? This is my advice, is make sure that you have a sober community of supportive people around you, and leave him because he is not worthy of you. That's my advice. And I feel as a woman in her 50s, I just going to say it as it is now. I'm like,
is she in her 50s?
No, I am. I'm in
you
my
are,
50s.
yeah.
I'm just saying, I don't fuck around. I don't fuck around anymore. I'm just going to say, leave him. He's not worthy of you. You deserve better. but you do this with a supportive community, and I promise you, after some time, your life will be so much better when you continue to be sober, and you'll attract someone who's worthy of you. And that's my advice to everybody, not just men and women. Be with someone who is worthy of you. And I personally think that more people are in a relationship based on fear than it is based on love. Fear of, and I know because that was my story.
Fear of being alone, fear of being abandoned.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Just clinging on. I accepted crumbs from the table so many freaking times. I wish I could time travel and go back to my 20s, because I would just be like burning down the house. Like, I just wish I had the confidence and self-esteem that I have now and know what I know at 25. It would be very different. But I guess that's what experience is all about.
I would, I would have had much more fun if I had believed in myself more when I was in my 20s,
Okay, I think we've got time for one more.
Okay.
Janie has said, love your podcast.
That's a good start. That's a good start.
That's a good start, yeah. Would love to hear your thoughts on stress and relapse cravings.
Inevitable. Inevitable. Absolutely inevitable. First of all, stress. Life is stressful. Life is difficult. Life is stressful. I don't know many people. I mean, my life's pretty stress-free, but, it isn't without stress. I don't have major stress in my life, but it's not without stress at times. I think stress and difficulty is part of being alive and part of life. I wouldn't kind of worry too much about that. Relapse cravings, most of us have been using and drinking for about 10 at least years before we get into the idea of sobriety. So that's a chunk of your life. Let's say it's 10. I think it's usually more, but let's say it's 10. That's 10 years of your life where you've been behaving a certain way and getting a certain response as a result of behaving that way. That's not going to suddenly change because one day you make the decision to stop drinking. It's not going to say, okay, well, your brain isn't going to go, okay, right, we'll completely readapt our thinking. We won't think about alcohol ever again. Thanks for making that decision. We'll never bother you again. Well, your brain doesn't work like that. Your brain is going to be knowing that there is a certain substance that when you get stressed or you are feeling like alcohol, it will make you go and do it. It will let you go and do it. And I think you've got to kind of retrain yourself to, first of all, cravings are not a sign of a weak recovery. I think a lot of people think, I still crave, you try giving up smoking. I gave up smoking and I thought about smoking for about a year after I gave it up, because you're doing something you're changing behavior that you've done for 10 years or more. It's not going to suddenly change overnight. You will have cravings occasionally. I haven't, but I know I'm incredibly lucky. But you will think about it sometimes. You will know that when you get stressed or when you get sad, there is a substance out there that will change that mood temporarily. And I think going back to that thought pattern isn't a problem. It's natural that you do that because you suddenly find yourself in a stressful situation. What do I normally do under the situation? I go and get a drink. It's a question of retraining yourself, accepting that cravings aren't necessarily a sign of weakness, and take the appropriate action. Ask for help, tell people that you're struggling, try and hang out in some good places, try and talk to somebody about whatever it is that's stressing you. But accept that these things are perfectly normal parts of recovery. If you think that Veronica and I have gone through the time we have done sober without ever getting stressed, no, certainly not in my life. It happens, and sometimes it's incredibly stressful. I mean, we were talking about Focus 12 earlier on. There were times I found that cripplingly stressful. But you kind of, if you get the right people around you, you get help. I have been lucky with cravings. I haven't had that, but I really understand how people, when they've done something for a long time, miss it and kind of can't quite fill that void quickly with other things.
So when you said inevitable, I just want to clarify, you don't mean relapse is inevitable. You mean that
no, I mean
stress and cravings are pretty much inevitable.
Yeah, exactly.
In the early stages, this is what we were saying earlier about early sobriety not being how it is long term.
Yeah.
So those things
No,
do
relapse
happen.
definitely not inevitable. Definitely not.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
but cravings pretty inevitable.
Yeah.
I know that I'm really unusual and been almost that's been very lucky. But stress, that is inevitable. Yeah, that is inevitable.
I think I was the same. I remember I do remember a handful of occasions of having some cravings for alcohol that were quite manageable. I think that's because when we got sober, I was so freaking done. Like I'd been done for years. Like I was so done that I don't know. I had zero like idea of wanting to have alcohol in my life. Like I just wanted the solution to feeling better, and it looked like I found it. So I don't know if that was anything to do with it, but
Yeah.
So first of all, know that you're going to experience stress and you're going to experience cravings. And I want to say my advice is we need to develop other ways of dealing with those things. We can't deal with those things in the way that we used to, which is typically to drink alcohol. That's where having a program is incredibly helpful. Having a program like the 12 steps or the Soberful program, they're just designs for living. They're just structure that we can use to manage and navigate life. Because I actually think a lot of people, not just people with a substance abuse problem, are struggling to navigate life because they don't understand. They don't have, like, for me, I just feel like I have this thing that's concrete that's around me. And and from experience, I know it's never let me down. Like I just have this, like when I don't know what to do, which has happened often when I felt despair or I don't know what to, I'm so stressed, I don't know what to do. I do know whether to do this. I know to go to a meeting or speak to someone, my sponsor, or I write an inventory. Like that's what I do. And that has got me through everything. So dealing with stressing, we have to develop a new way of dealing with this and navigating through the world because our old way wasn't working. And know that they will also pass. I mean, God, I remember seeing you very stressed and at focus, and I've been, that's just part.
Yeah.
And I also think I hit burnout when I was about 3 years sober, something like 3 or 4 years sober. And I remember going down to the fridge and I had a roommate and he had beer in it and I never noticed it. But I remember opening the fridge at 2 a.m, not being able to sleep and seeing his beer and thinking that will help me sleep. Mm-hmm. And my next thought was, I'm in trouble. I need to get help. And the next day I did. And that's happened more than once where I've been like, I'm in trouble and I need help. And I just do it. And that's what I do. I call someone, whatever it takes, I do it. And that's what's always got me through. And I think that's what the message I want to give there.
I get very concerned when we ask people to send in questions and we don't answer them. So how to cope with sugar cravings and addiction? Inevitable. You're going to get sugar cravings. There's loads of sugar in alcohol. You're going to crave it for a lot to begin with. You probably eat chocolate, whatever you're going to get it from. Absolutely inevitable. It'll settle down if you keep on top of it. If you let it go crazy, it'll go crazy. But, your body is going through sugar withdrawal and it's inevitable. How to increase your energy and dopamine levels in the early weeks? You're not probably going to be able to do it. Getting sober is hard, bloody work. Putting your body through detox and getting all that sort of, letting all your internal organs settle down, letting your bloodstream settle down, letting all that stuff settle down, it's quite draining and exhausting. So I'd be happy with a little bit of exercise, a little bit of dopamine hits. Maybe you might start having sex for the first time for ages, whatever, I don't know, but
it's exercise. The answer is go for a walk.
I think go for a walk, enjoy the things around you, get your dopamine hits from looking at beautiful things. But in the first few weeks, it's tough. It's really, really hard work.
But it will pass.
Yeah. So, yeah.
And then last one is, Ilke said, I would like an episode about neurodivergence and addiction, which we will put on the list.
Yeah,
we'll put on the list. Yeah, we'll do that.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay, well, that was our 6th anniversary episode. Please leave us a rating on the app if you can. It would be so great. Just a review or a little star. Make sure that you're following the show so you don't miss an episode. And we love your suggestions for future show. We'll put the neurodivergent one on.
Yeah.
And Chip, thank you for being here with me and sticking it out for 6 more years. Are you up to getting to 10? 4 more years?
If my body,
decade.
if my body is, yes, I'll be 80. So whether or not my body will let me go that far, I don't know. But yes.
We're going to go for it.
God,
I think.
what a thought! What a thought! Oh my God! What have I just said?
The key to longevity is having goals and a plan. I think that's a key. Yeah. So I think if you think I'm going to do 10 years of podcasting, then you'll see yourself into your 80s. I think that's the key.
It was the statement, I'm going to be 80, that has really, really upset me.
Well, on that note, I'll be 55.
Yeah.
On that note, thank you so much for bearing with us and listening and being part of our audience. We really love all the feedback and comments, and we love hearing so many times that people have got sober through listening to this podcast. Take care. See you next week.
Care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.